Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to cover the modern periodic table and the concept of periodicity in the properties of the elements. So, if you look at the earlier attempts in terms of classification of elements, whether it is the Dobryner concept of triads or the Newland law of octaves or the Lothermeyer attempt of plotting the elements based upon the atomic weight and then the atomic volume in terms of the curves, or the Mandleaf table, each of them had a certain drawback, and that is the reason why there was a gap that is left in terms of looking at what could be a better attempt in terms of the study of this classification of the elements. So even in the Mandleaf table discussion in one of the previous videos, we would have talked about what are the drawbacks of the Mandleaf table. So the main drawback is the basis on which the classification is being done, which is the atomic weight. So when the elements are arranged in the increasing order of atomic weight, the Mandleaf law says that the physical and chemical properties will be repeating at a certain period. Okay, so that is what is the idea of the Mandleaf law. But there were issues in terms of the position of isotopes, because isotopes of same element, like say for example we talk about hydrogen, we have three isotopes of hydrogen: protium, deuterium, and then tritium. Okay, so all of them, they'll have different mass numbers and also different atomic masses, which means isotopes must be given different places in the table as per the Mandleaf law. But they were not given different places. In fact, if we try to accommodate all the isotopes of elements, the entire table will actually go for a toss. So that is the reason why the isotopes were not actually given a solution in the Mandleaf table. And also there were discrepancies in terms of the atomic weights of the elements itself, because of the errors associated with the measurement. In fact, if today we talk about it, it might be looking like a little bit of an exaggeration, but at that point of time, since various scientists across different countries used to perform experiments and then measure the values, and there was not as such a very standardized way of accepting the atomic mass of the elements at that point of time. At least now we have the IUPAC system, but at that point of time it is quite common that people used to take different atomic values into consideration, while they, like say for example, scientists in Russia could probably be using a different value for the atomic mass of the element, and say for example in Britain they could be using a different value for the atomic mass. Okay, so there were discrepancies in terms of the values of the atomic mass itself. In fact, the Mandleaf table also served, I mean, not very prominently, but in couple of cases, right, it also helped in correcting the atomic mass of the elements. Okay, so the atomic weight or atomic mass itself, there were discrepancies in terms of the measurement of it, and also when Mandleaf had to compromise on his own law, he had to keep the element with a higher atomic weight ahead of the element with a lower atomic weight, which is compromising on his own law in order to keep the elements in the respective groups where their properties will be in sync with the rest of the elements. So these are all the drawbacks that were associated with the Mandleaf table, and that gave the room for a thought that could there be a better basis for the classification of the elements, because it is well understood that there can be a better way of classification of these elements to see a more structured way of the periodic trends happening in the uh, properties of the elements. And the solution to that actually come from one of the unexpected corners. So physicist named Henry Moseley, while he was doing his experiments on the X-rays produced from metal surfaces. So if you have a fast moving beam of electrons which are bombarded onto a metal plate, so here electrons will come from the cathode and the metal plate will be acting as the anode. So when the electrons are bombarded onto the metal plate, there will be a lot of energy dissipation, heat will be dissipated. Okay, and hence usually we take the anode to be a metal with a high melting point, so that it should not melt actually. Okay, so along with the heat that is released, the anode metal also produces the X-rays. And the thing about the X-rays is the frequency of the X-rays produced. If you represent nu as the frequency, then root nu is equal to A into Z minus B. So this is an empirical formula that Moseley has added, where A and B will be constants, and Z is a characteristic number that he found to be changing from element to element. So depending upon what is the target metal that is taken here as the anode, the Z value is changing. Say for example, for iron, the Z value is something. For copper, the Z value is some other value. If you take a nickel, the Z value is changing. So he was able to see that because the frequency of the emitted X-rays is a characteristic property of the metal. Why? Because different metals are giving different frequencies. Not all the metals are giving the same value for the frequency, which means the frequency of the X-rays emitted is a characteristic property of the metal that is being taken, or the element that is being taken, we can say. Okay, and this particular property is dependent upon the value Z. So the Z is a number that is associated with the element. So the value of Z is changing from element to element. So this number is being named as the atomic number, and the conclusion is that the properties of the element, or the characteristic properties of the element, will be a function of this particular number called as atomic number, because at the time the significance of atomic number is not known to people. So today we know that what is significance of atomic number. Atomic number represents the number of electrons that will revolve around the nucleus of an atom, and the atomic number is also equal to the number of protons which are inside the nucleus of the atom. Okay, but that time when the number is discovered, the significance is not known to people, but it is accepted that this number is going to be the determining number for the characteristic properties of the elements. But here we need to keep one thing in mind, that the Moseley's experiments were done primarily for the metals, and this idea is extended to all the elements, which has become the basis for the modern periodic table. So the modern periodic law, based on which the table is created, considers that the physical and chemical properties of the elements are periodic functions of their atomic number. So the atomic number is basically what it is, the number of electrons, okay, so which will be equal to also the number of protons if you're talking about the neutral atom. For a neutral atom, atomic number is what? Atomic number will be equal to number of electrons that will revolve around the nucleus, and the atomic number is also equal to number of protons which are inside the nucleus. Okay, so this is the basis for the creation of the modern periodic table. Okay, and the thing about this atomic number, over a period of time, when the idea of electrons and electronic configuration is come into light, so people would now understand better as to why this number is that much significant, because the electronic configuration will depend upon what number of electrons. In structure of atom chapter we studied about it. Okay, electronic configuration will depend upon what number of electrons. Okay, and number of electrons is nothing but the atomic number. So we have a relation between the electronic configuration and the atomic number, and that is the reason why the chemical properties to a large extent, and even some physical properties, right, they would depend upon the atomic number. Now before we go and look at the modern periodic table, let us look at the basis for the arrangement of the elements in the table. So the elements were arranged in the table in the increasing order of the atomic numbers that is there, but you cannot have all the elements put in one row. We have elements arranged in a tabular form. That's why we call it as a modern periodic table. So in a tabular form, we must look at what is the length of the rows, because there will be rows and there will be, of course, like the way we have in the Mendeleev table, we will be also having the columns. Okay, so the columns will be called as groups and the rows will be called as the periods. So what is the length of that row, or how many elements can actually be present in a particular row? So this is based upon the concept of valence shell. So the number of elements that can be accommodated in a particular period is based upon the valence shell. So I'll explain how this is done. So if you look at the increasing order of energy of subshells, this is what we study in the Aufbau principle, isn't it? So if you look at the increasing order of energy of subshells, we have this is the order, right, based upon the n plus L rule. So we have, first we will have what, 1s. Okay, so when we fill electrons into the 1s subshell, how many electrons we can fill? We can fill 2 electrons. And after filling 1s, we will go and fill 2s and 2p. So totally the 2s and 2p, the number of electrons that can be filled is 2s subshell can have 2 electrons, 2p subshell can have 6 electrons. Okay, totally it can have 8 electrons. Then after 2p, what is going to be filled? We will have 3s, 3p. So we will have 3s and 3p. So the number of electrons that can be filled is 3s 2 electrons, 3p 6 electrons, totally again 8. So the first period, we can see the valence shell of the elements is going to be the first shell. The valence shell or the outermost shell will be what? The first shell. Second period elements, the valence shell is going to be the second orbit. Third period elements, the valence shell is going to be the third orbit. Now after filling 3p, where we'll go? We'll go to 4s. Look at this. After 4s, we'll come to 3d and 4p. So 4s, 3d and then 4p. These elements, right, will be in the fourth period. We can see for these elements what will be the valence shell? The valence shell will be the fourth orbit, because after filling 4s only we will fill 3d, isn't it? Now what will be the number of elements here? We will have 2 electrons filled into 4s, 10 electrons filled into 3d, because the d subshell capacity is 10 electrons. Then 6 electrons. So 2 plus 10 plus 6, totally 18. So in the fourth period we will be having 18 elements. Fifth period, after 4p, look at after 4p what comes? 5s. So 5s, then 4d, then 5p. So 5s, 4d, then 5p. So here again we will have 18 elements, and the valence orbit will be what? The fifth orbit for all these elements in the fifth period. Then sixth period, after filling 5p, we'll come to 6s. So 6s, okay, 4f, 5d, 6p. Totally we can see 2 plus 6 plus 10 plus 14. Okay, f subshell is what? 14. So totally 2 plus f is 14, d is 10 plus 6. Totally it will be 32. So the number of elements that will be there in the sixth period will be 32. Then seventh period, which will be the incomplete. Seventh period will be incomplete. Okay, so we'll have after 6s we have 4f, then 5d, then 6p. Then comes what? Then comes 7s. After 7s we will go to the 5f, then 6d, then 7p. So we'll have 5f, 6d and 7p. This is anyway incomplete. So the elements in this particular period are not fully discovered. So we'll still see that there are some ambiguity in terms of their stability and the existence in isolation, etc. Okay, but we can take it as what this period basically contains mostly the radioactive elements, and also the period is incomplete. So if you see the entire set of periods, right, the way the periods are determined is based upon what will be the valence shell of these elements. All the elements in the first period, valence shell will be the first orbit. All the elements in second period, valence shell will be the second orbit. Third period, valence shell will be third orbit. Fourth period, valence shell will be fourth orbit, like that. Okay, so if you see the modern period table based upon this classification, this is how the table looks like. So we have the first period, we can see here. So this is the first period. So first period will have 2 elements, just hydrogen and helium. So in fact in the modern period table, right, one of the drawback of the Mendeleev table is that the Mendeleev table could not give a definite position for the hydrogen, because hydrogen has got similarities to that of the alkali metals or the first group, like lithium, sodium, potassium, and also it has similarities to that of the elements fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, these elements. But in the modern table, hydrogen is given an exclusive position. It is neither kept along with the first group nor will the fluorine, chlorine, bromine. So we'll see, like, in the modern table how these groups are actually numbered. We'll talk about it. But if you see the first period, there are two elements, hydrogen, helium. Okay, so we can see this is where we are actually filling the 1s. Electrons are getting into 1s. Okay, now the second period. So we'll see second period will have 8 elements. So here what we are, so here let's say I'll write it here 1s. So here second period means 2s and 2p are being filled. Third period means 3s and 3p are being filled. Okay, this is the third period. Fourth period means what is it? 4s, 3d and 4p. So this is the fourth period. Okay, so fifth period, what is it? It will be 5s, 4d, 5p. That is the fifth period. Okay, and sixth period, this is the longest. It will have 32 elements. So here the thing that we need to notice is after barium we will actually have lanthanum here. Okay, so the lanthanum is being given a place along with the rest of the 14 elements where we are filling electrons into 4f subshell. So we'll actually call these elements as the 4f series or the lanthanoid series, because these 14 elements will be coming after lanthanum. Okay, so this place is actually for the lanthanum with atomic number 57. Okay, and we see that here what all we'll be filling, we'll have the 6s, then 4f, then 5d, then 6p. So totally 32 elements will be there. Okay, so though we are keeping the elements from lanthanum, okay, not actually lanthanum but from cerium to lutetium, right? So we'll call them as the 4f series or the lanthanoid series or the rare earths. So why they are not kept in the main table is because if we arrange these elements in the main table, obviously their properties will not match with the places that they would take. And the other thing is all these elements will have almost similar properties. Okay, so we'll talk about the reason why they will have similar properties also later. In fact, in plus 2 we'll have a separate chapter itself. We have D block and F block chapter where we'll discuss about the D block elements and F block elements in detail. Okay, then the seventh period, which is the incomplete period, right? So we have francium, radium and actinium. So here we'll have actinium. After actinium we'll have 14 elements. This is the 5f series. Okay, then we will see that there are names being given for the elements, but there are concerns in terms of their existence and isolation, and also the accuracy of the measurement of their atomic numbers, because while doing the experimental studies under extreme conditions, right, so the accuracy of the numbers that are being measured could be under some scrutiny. So that is the reason why we will still consider the seventh period as the incomplete period. Okay, so this is about the entire table that we have as the long form of the periodic table or the modern periodic table, and this also didn't happen in one go. It has taken some time, okay, for this final form to actually evolve. And in this table, the way we see it, right, the majority of the elements are metals, and we have non-metals which are at the right side of the table. So we have carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, selenium, fluorine, chlorine, bromine. So these are all the non-metals. But other than that, the majority of the elements of the table, okay, will be metals. And the table, right, is numbered in terms of the groups starting from 1 to 18. So this is the modern numbering system. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, then 13, then 14, 15, 16, 17 and 18. So we see that the earlier numbering system, right, used to be a 1A here and a 2A, then 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B, 7B, then 8, 9, 10 used to be 8B. Okay, 11th used to be 1b, 12th used to be 2b, 13th used to be 3a, this is 4a, this is 5a, this is 6a, 17th is 7a, 18th is 8a. So this is the erstwhile numbering system for the modern period table. So today we most conveniently use the numbering system from 1 to 18, okay, and we don't usually follow the A and B nomenclature, but if we are able to look at it, that's fine. Now in this table, as we see it, right, the first and second groups, the elements starting from first group, we will not consider hydrogen, it will be from lithium. So lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, and then francium. In that, francium is radioactive. Second group is beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium, and then radium. So all the seventh period, you can see most of them are what? Radioactive. So that is the reason why in the periodic table, when we talk about the study of properties of elements, right, we don't touch upon the study of the seventh period elements much, because these are radioactive elements. Now the first group and second group, if you see in the first group, the electrons will be entering into the s subshell. In fact, if you look at the lithium, so what is the lithium electronic arrangement? It is 1s2 2s1. Sodium will be 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s1. So electron that is coming into last into the atom, so we also call it as the differentiating electron. Means what is the electron that is differentiating the previous element to this element? The differentiating electron is entering into the s subshell. That's why these first group and second group elements will be called as the s block elements. So we look at the classification of elements as s block. So the elements are classified into s block, d block, p block, and then f block. So we look at the classification also in a little detail, but based upon the differentiating electron, where the differentiating electron is entering into, which subshell it is entering into, the entire table is divided into 4 blocks. So one is the s block. So the first group and second group are what? The s block elements. So if you look at the first group, right, so they will have the electron that is entering into the element at the last will be getting into ns1 subshell. Okay, in case of second group, it will get into same, the last electron that is entering into the atom will be entering into ns subshell, but it will give a configuration ns2. So that is the second group. So these two we'll call them as the s block. When the differentiating electron is entering into the d subshell, so we'll call the respective elements as the d block elements. When the differentiating electron is entering into the p subshell, we'll call the elements as what? P block. Like see, beryllium. So what is beryllium? Beryllium arrangement is 1s2 2s2, that is beryllium. When we move from beryllium to boron, so boron arrangement is what? 1s2 2s2 2p1. So the differentiating electron is entering into p subshell. That is why boron is what? A p block element. Okay, and when the differentiating electron is entering into the f subshell, so we will not include lanthanum and actinium, but from cerium to lutetium and thorium to lawrencium, right? So these set of elements, we will call them as the f block elements. So this is how we look at the elements as the s block, d block, f block, and then p block. So s, d, f, s block, d block, and f block all are metals. P block also we have some metals, like lead is a metal, bismuth is a metal. Okay, p block we have non-metals, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, and we also have elements which have properties intermediate to the metals and non-metals, like boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony. So these elements will have properties intermediate to that of the metals and non-metals. So we'll call them as metalloids. We'll talk about it when we go to the property of what is an metallic nature and what is an non-metallic nature. We'll discuss about it in this chapter. Okay, but this is how we look at the modern periodic table. And here in the modern periodic table, the period number has significance. What is significance of period number? When we say first period, means it represents that the elements are having the valence orbit as the first orbit. And group number also has significance. Group number also has got significance. So if you look at how do we arrive at the group number, if you follow the earlier nomenclature, so we have 1A, 2A, then here comes 3A, here comes 4A, then 5A, then it will be 6A, then it will be 7A, then it will be 8A. So if you look at for the A series groups, the group number will actually represent number of valence electrons. For the A series group, the group number represents what? Number of valence electrons. So how, if you talk about say for example beryllium, so beryllium is what? 1s2, 2s2. What is the valence orbit here? Second orbit. So what is the number of electrons in the second orbit? It is 2 electrons. So the group number is 2A. If you look at boron, the arrangement is what? 1s2, 2s2, 2p1. The valence orbit is second orbit. Second orbit we have 2 electrons in the s subshell and 1 electron in the p, totally 3. The group number is 3A. So the A series elements, right, the group number will also represent the number of electrons in the valence shell. So this is about the significance of the period number and the group number. And if you know the position of the element, because why are we talking about basically arranging the elements in the tabular form? If somebody tells us that okay, there is an element which is in the 3A period or 3A group, sorry, then even we don't know about the atomic number of the element or the atomic mass of the element and so on and so forth, we would be able to a large extent understand what kind of behavior this element will have. Like if we say that no, it is an element in the 3A group, means we would know that broadly the properties will be similar to that of aluminum, gallium, indium, etc. If we know that there is an element in the second A group, then we will know that the elements will be broadly similar to that of beryllium, magnesium, calcium, strontium, barium and radium. So that is how the position of an element in a table is significant, because if you know the position, means we will be able to understand broadly what are the properties of the element. Now if you look at the period characteristics, this is what we were discussing a little while. So what we see is the first period. So first period has got only 2 elements, right? This is the shortest period. So first period has hydrogen and helium. Second and third, they are called short periods. Short periods, they'll have 8 elements. Second period has got 8 elements, third also has got 8 elements. Fourth and fifth, they are called long periods. They have 18 elements each. Sixth is what? The longest period. We have seen how many elements are there? 32 elements will be there. Seventh one is the incomplete. Now lanthanides and actinides, where they are present at the bottom of the table, right? So we can see where they are at the bottom of the table. So lanthanides and actinides, they'll have 14 elements each. Okay, and the third period elements, which are from sodium to chlorine, so we call them as the typical elements. So these kind of questions could be at times important from examinations perspective, especially for NEET. Okay, so the typical elements are basically what? The third period elements. And second period elements are the lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine and neon. The second period elements are also called as the bridge elements. I'll tell you the reason why they are called as bridge elements, because after some time in the same chapter, right, we'll talk about a property called as diagonal relationship. So what is the property called as diagonal relationship? What is the diagonal relationship? The element of one group, like say for example lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon. Okay, so below lithium comes sodium, below beryllium comes magnesium, boron comes aluminum, carbon comes silicon. The element of one group will have similarities to the element of the other group of the subsequent period. Like lithium will have similarities to magnesium, beryllium will have similarities to aluminum, boron will have similarities to silicon. In fact, boron is a metalloid, silicon is also metalloid. Like we'll see when we go to the first group or the alkali metals chapter, the abnormal behavior of lithium or similarities between lithium and magnesium. Both lithium and magnesium, right, they will form stable nitrides. Normally the first group elements, they will not be able to form nitrides. Okay, but lithium will be able to form. That is an exception. So we'll have lithium which will have more similarities to the magnesium. This relationship is called as what? Diagonal relationship, because it is able to bridge the similarities to the next group elements. That is why these second period elements are called as what? Bridge elements. And as we have talked about it, period number. What does period number represent? Period number represents the valence shell or the outermost orbit. So period number represents the valence shell or the outermost orbit. So all the elements in a particular period, for them we will know what is the valence shell or the outermost orbit if you know the period number for that. Now looking at the characteristics of the groups. If you have the A series groups, okay, so for the A series groups, the valence electrons, number of valence electrons of an element in a particular group will be equal to group number. So that is what we were talking about, right? Like, if you have the A series, which is 1A, then we have 2A, then from here we'll have 3A to 8A. So for the A series, the number of valence electrons will be equal to the group number, okay. And the elements of the groups which resemble typical elements. So typical elements are what? Third period, right? What are those? Sodium to chlorine. So the elements that resemble them means what? We'll have to cover all those groups. Like if you see what are those groups basically, so here we are having sodium sitting and here we have chlorine. Means we have to basically cover from where? We have to cover from the 1A, 2A and then 3A to 7A. So look at it, 1A, 2A, 3A up to 7A. We will not include 8A because 8A will be the inert gases. We'll talk about it separately. They will be having a stable electronic arrangement and they will be chemically very less reactive. So in the modern numbering system, the normal elements will be what? It will be the this is what the first group, second group, then it will be what? 13th to 17th. So that is the modern numbering system. So these elements are called as what? The normal elements, okay, and they can also be called as the representative elements. So what are representative elements? The representative elements are what? The group 1, group 2 and 13th to 17th. We will call them as what? Representative elements, okay. And the elements which will be in the B group category. B group category means what? We have 1B, 2B. So B group is what? This is 1B, this is 2B, then we have 3B up to 8B. So all this, right, in the modern nomenclature it is what? From 3 to 12, groups 3 to 12, okay. So these are called as the transition elements. So why the name transition has actually come is because when we see the trend in terms of the properties of the elements, right, so as we go from left to right, we'll see that there will be a gradual shift in terms of the properties of the elements, whether it is the nature of the elements as such. Like if you see the left side, we'll have strong metals, and as we go from left to right, the metallic nature will decrease gradually. And then if you go to the extreme right side, means we'll have non-metallic nature coming. So the elements here, right, we can see it like it is making a transition from the S block to the P block. So we're making a transition from the S block to P block. That is why these elements from 3 to 12 groups, we call them as what? The transition elements. So we'll make a transition from the metallic nature to the non-metal nature. Not just that, other properties also will have a gradual transition from one extreme behavior to the other extreme behavior, okay. And if you look at the 18th group in the modern numbering system, in the erstwhile numbering system, it is 8A. So these are what? Noble gases or the inert gases. So what are these elements? We have helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon, okay. And these elements, their atomic numbers are important. Why? Because sometimes we will be asked questions like say for example, there is an element with atomic number, suddenly they will give us atomic number 84. They would ask which group the element belongs to. For those kind of questions, right, if we remember the atomic numbers of the inert gases, so what are those? 2 helium, then 10. So basically first two steps we'll add 8, then comes 18. Okay, then how much you have to add? We have to add 18, 36, 20, 36, then another 18, 54. Then now we have to add 32. It will become what? 86. Okay, then of course another 32 we have to add, so it will become 118. Okay, so the inert gas elements atomic numbers, if you remember, means from there we will be able to back calculate. So whatever the atomic number they are giving, right, from there we can back calculate and then determine what will be the group or where the element actually belongs to, because this is a very popular model of question that we can expect, at least based upon the table as such. Okay, so this is about the significance of the groups. Now look at this question: why the third period contains 8 elements and not 18? So why there are only 8 elements in the third period and not 18? Because the third period represents what? The elements having the valence shell. The elements having valence shell as the third shell. But the thing is, if you look at the way we will fill up the electrons into subshells, what is it? We have 1s, 2s, 2p, then 3s, 3p, 3d, 4s, 4p. So first we will fill 1s, then we will fill 2s, then 2p and then 3s, then we will fill 3p. After 3p we will fill 4s. Then comes 3d, which means in the first round we would only be able to fill 3s and 3p. After filling 3s, we will go to 3p. After 3p, we have to fill electrons into 4s. Means those elements, right, for them the valence shell will now become what? Fourth shell. That is why the third period will only contain elements where we are filling electrons into the 3s subshell and 3p subshell. What are the elements of the third period? Sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, argon. So these are the elements of the third period. So here we are filling electrons into 3s. From aluminum onwards we are filling electrons into 3p. Okay, so that is the reason why we have only 8 elements and not 18 elements, because we know very well that the total capacity of the third orbit is what? Third orbit has got s subshell, p subshell and d subshell. But even before filling 3d, we have to fill electrons into 4s, which means the elements would not be kept in the third period. Those elements are going to be kept in the fourth period. But we can see that in the fourth period, so what is the fourth period? Fourth period will be the potassium, calcium. This is the fourth period, right? After 4s, so here we are filling 4s. After 4s we will fill 3d. So we'll start from scandium, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, zinc, nickel, copper, zinc. Okay, so that is how we'll have the 3d subshell being filled. Okay, so after filling 4s we will fill 3d. Okay, after 3d we will fill 4p. Okay, so that is how the elements will be arranged as per the periods. So the period number represents what? The corresponding valence orbit. Okay, get into the study of the classification of the elements into certain categories. Like say we have the s block. So what is the s block? The first and second group, where we have the outermost electronic configuration. What is the outermost electronic configuration? It is ns1 for the first group elements and ns2 for the second group elements. So first group elements are called as what? Alkali metals, because they'll form strong bases. Their hydroxides are what? Strong bases. And second group, they'll have Ig means what? Inert gas. Like say for example, for sodium, if you have to express sodium, right, what is the electronic arrangement of sodium? 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 and then 3s1. Either we can write it like this or we can write it like this: neon 3s1. This is how we can write it. Means the 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 is electronic arrangement of neon. Like that we can write. So inert gas followed by ns1. For the alkaline earth metals, like say for example magnesium, right, what is magnesium normal arrangement? Magnesium atomic number 12, sodium atomic number is what? 11. Magnesium, what is the normal electronic arrangement? 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 and then 3s2. So how we can write it? We can write it as neon 3s2. So inert gas followed by ns1 or inert gas followed by ns2. This is how we can write the electronic arrangement of the first group and second group elements. Second group elements, they are called as alkaline earth metals because their hydroxides, like if you talk about the calcium hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, they are also alkaline in nature, means basic in nature. What are alkalis? Soluble bases are called as what? Water soluble bases are called as alkalis, isn't it? So their hydroxide also basic in nature, and these metals, right, they are mainly available in the earth's crust. So where they are available? They are available in the earth's crust. Like say if you look at what is the ore of calcium, right, it is calcium carbonate, which we call as the limestone. So limestone, these ores, they are present in the earth's crust. That's why we call them as what? Alkaline earth metals. Okay, so this is about the s block elements, and once we cover the aspect of the periodic properties, right, we will also look at the characteristics of the s block elements. Here we are just trying to understand what this s block represents. Once we cover the properties of the elements and how the properties have their periodicity, then we'll also again take a look at what are the characteristics of the s block elements. Of course, we have a separate chapter itself in +1 about the s block elements. There we'll in-depth study about these elements. Okay, then the next is p block elements. So p block elements is what? In the new numbering system, it is the 13th to 18th. Okay, so we see that these elements, right, they will have the outermost shell arrangement as what? ns2 np 1 to 6. Means for the 13th it is what? ns2 np1. Like we have seen for boron, what is it? Boron, what is it? 1s2 2s2 2p1. We see what is the valence electronic arrangement? 2s2 2p1. Okay, so like that we'll have ns2 np1 for the 13th group elements. 13th group elements are what we call them as boron family. So boron, aluminum, gallium, indium, thallium. Of course, we'll learn about while we call this group as boron family, the properties of the rest of the elements, right, will be quite different from boron. Okay, then the 14th group, where we'll have the electronic arrangement as ns2 np2. Okay, the carbon family. Okay, and the 15th group, this is the nitrogen family. Okay, nitrogen family is also called as nicogens. Okay, so why the word nicogens is because the hydrates of these elements, right, which will be in the gaseous form, whether it is ammonia or phosphine, they'll be very suffocating. So that's why we call them as what? Nicogens. And 16th group will have ns2 np4 arrangement. So these elements, oxen family, which we also call as chalcogens because they'll be ore forming, because most of the ores of the metals you see, right, they'll be either the oxide ores or the sulfide ores. In 10th standard you would have studied about the extraction of elements, or extraction of the metals. In +2 also we have a chapter which is the general principles of extraction of elements. There we'll talk about what are the common ores of different metals, and we'll see that most of the common ores will be either in the oxide form or the sulfide form. Okay, that's why we call these the 16th group elements as what? Chalcogens. Then we have halogens, 17th group, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine. So they'll be, the word halogens comes because they'll be salt forming, like with the first group and second group elements, right, they'll be able to form salts. Then the 18th group we call as the noble gases, that is our helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon. So 18th group except helium, right, except helium, what is the arrangement we have? ns2 np6. So we'll talk about the importance of this. So this will give us an 8 electron structure in the valence shell, which we call as octet. We'll talk about this in the chemical bonding chapter. Okay, so this is perceived as the reason for the stability of this elements, and there came the concept of the octet rule. So we'll talk about it in the chemical bonding, but this is about the p block elements. And here the total number of valence shell electrons is equal to what? If you look at the total number of valence shell electrons, the addition of it, right, will be giving us group number as per the 3a 4a, 5a, 6a, 7a, that convention. If we add up, like say for example, take for example the boron family. What is it? Valence arrangement is ns2 np1, right? So add valence electrons, 2 plus 1 is 3. That means it will be the 3a. So when we add valence electrons, the valence electrons will be giving us what? It will give us the group number as per the A and B nomenclature. So this is about the p block elements, and as we discussed before, the p block elements will have what? It will have non-metals, metalloids, and also some metals. Okay, so p block part of it we'll study in plus 1, 13th and 14th groups we'll study in plus 1, 15th to 18th we'll study in plus 2. Then we have the d block elements. So d block elements, we also call them as the transition elements. Okay, so what are these d block elements? The last electron will be entering into the d orbital. So where is the last electron entering into? It is entering into the d orbital. Okay, so if you look at the elements starting from scandium, so scandium, titanium, vanadium, the electrons are entering into 3d subshell. That's why we call them as the 3d series. Yttrium, zirconium, we call them as what? 4d. From lanthanum, okay, so after lanthanum we'll have the lanthanides, 14 elements of the f block series. Okay, so lanthanum will come here. So lanthanum we'll call it as what? The 5d series. Then actinium we'll call it as what? The 6d series. So this is about the d block elements. If you look at the d block elements, right, the general arrangement, because we'll have normally, what is it, if you talk about the third period, right, we would have filled 4s with 2 electrons, then started filling the 3d. So we should actually have 4s is already filled with 2 electrons, then we should have 3d being filled from 1 electron to 10 electron. Like we should have scandium, 1 electron comes into 3d, up to zinc, total 10 electrons should come. But we have seen in the atomic structure chapter, like chromium, copper, they will have abnormal electronic arrangement because of the extra stability of the half filled and complete filled d subshell. So that is the reason why what we will be having is, for chromium, so what is the actual arrangement is 4s1 3d5. For copper, what is it? It will be 4s1 3d10, abnormal arrangement. Okay, so if you want to write the general arrangement of the d block elements, we would be writing it as the ns 1 to 2, n minus 1, d 1 to 10. This is how we'll write. Means n minus 1 level we'll have n minus 1 d subshell will have 1 to 10 electrons. ns subshell will have either 1 electron or 2 electrons. Okay, and here there is one exception, palladium. So palladium will have the palladium arrangement. So normally it should be what? It should be 5s2 4d8 as per the normal Abo principle. But palladium will have an electronic arrangement of 4d10. Palladium, what will be the arrangement? Will be having an arrangement of 4d10. And again, this is based upon the stability factors. So if you have to include that, so in this case ns will be what? That 5s will have 0 electrons. This is not the actual arrangement of palladium. It is what? 4d10, which means it will be n5 5s0 4d10. So we have to include this scenario also, means what we have to say ns0 to 2, n minus 1 d 1 to 10. Otherwise what we can say, normally ns1 to 2, this is how normally we will write ns1 to 2, n minus 1 d 1 to 10. Exception is what? Palladium is exception. That is how we can remember. So this is about the electronic arrangement of the d block elements or the transition elements. Okay, and we even talked about the fact that some of these elements nowadays we don't call them as transition elements, because we see that the properties of these elements like zinc or mercury, they don't gel much with the rest of these elements. Okay, the next is f block elements. So f block elements, they are also called as inner transition elements. So what do we call them as? We call them as inner transition elements. So again here, so after lanthanum, right, so we have from cerium to lutetium, properties are varying. Gradually there is a variation in terms of the properties. And here the electrons are entering into if we look at this, right, so the lanthanum is atomic number 57. Lanthanum is xenon. This is the arrangement of lanthanum. Xenon 6s2, okay, 5d1, that is lanthanum. What is it? Xenon 6s2 5d1. Here, whenever you see the electronic arrangement of lanthanum, we must get a doubt. As per the Aufbau principle, right, after 6s, what we must fill? We should fill the 4f and not the 5d. We should fill 4f. But what is the lanthanum arrangement? It is xenon 6s2 5d1. After lanthanum, we will start filling, only one electron is getting into 5d. After that, we will start filling electrons into 4f. Normally, as per the energy order, what we are saying, 6s is less than, 4f is less than 5d, like that. So after filling 6s, we should be filling electrons into 4f. But the one electron getting into 4f, right, would make that arrangement to be very unstable. That is the reason why that lone electron will not get into the 4f, but rather the lone electron will get into 5d first, because the energy gap between the two will not be that much. Though 4f is having a lesser energy than 5d, the energy difference will not be as much significant. That is the reason why the electron, right, in case of lanthanum, it will be what? After 6s, the lone electron, instead of getting into 4f, it gets into 5d. So 5d, one electron, that is the lanthanum arrangement. Then from cerium onwards, we will have the 4f being filled. Okay. And if you look at the valence orbit, it is like, say for example, the n is the valence number. Then which f subshell is getting filled here? You can see n minus 2 f subshell is getting filled. So if you look at the general electronic arrangement formula, right, what is general electronic arrangement formula? ns2 n minus 1 d level, because we are giving one electron here first, right, but sometimes what we see is this electron will be again moved back into the f subshell because of stability factors. So n minus 1 d level can have either 0 or 1, and the n minus 2 f level will have electrons filled from 1 to 14. That is why, since we are filling electrons into n minus 2 f subshell, so we call it as what? Inner transition. So transition element means d block, right? We fill electrons into n minus 1 d subshell. Here we are filling electrons into n minus 2 f subshell. That is why they are called as what? Inner transition elements. Okay. Now again, same is the story from the actinium. So actinium, it will be what? Radon 7s2 6d1. Okay, radon 7s2 6d1. Okay, and from there we will start filling electrons into 5f, starting from thorium up to lawrencium. So all these elements we will be calling them as what? 5f series. The elements starting from cerium to lutetium we call them as 4f series, and these are what? 5f series. Okay, so each series will have 14 elements because the capacity of the f subshell is what? 14 electrons. So this is about the f block elements. So we have s block elements, then p block elements, then d block elements, and then f block elements. So if you look at the electronic arrangement of the f block elements, which of course we'll study in much detail when we go to the d and f block chapter in +2, we can see lanthanum, right? What is it? Xenon 5d1, or rather, I mean 6s2 5d1. Then cerium, we'll start seeing that electrons are entering into what? The f subshell. Praseodymium, we'll see that electrons are entering the f subshell. Here we'll see that the electron from 5d is making a transition to 4f because of energy conservation. Then neodymium, then promethium, then samarium, then europium. So we'll see that cerium, gadolinium, and lutetium, these are the elements where we will still have the electron in the 5d1 level. Other elements that we can see, the 5d electron is making a transition to 4f itself. So there is a mnemonic that we can remember. So we'll remember this like Segal. What is the mnemonic? Segal means Ce is what? Cerium, Ga is what? Gadolinium, and L is what? Lutetium. So for these Segal, we will have the electron remaining in the 5d level. Others, the 5d one electron will make a transition into the 4f itself. Okay, so this is about the electronic arrangement of the f block elements. Okay, so this is what we have to cover in terms of the classification of elements as the s block, p block, d block and f block based upon the electronic configuration. What is the basis of the classification? Where the last electron, or we also call it as what, differentiating electron, where the differentiating electron is entering into. Differentiating electron is entering into the s subshell, means it will be s block. P subshell means p block. D subshell means d block. F subshell means f block, like that. Now there is also a parallel classification that is done by Niels Bohr, and this is also sometimes commonly used. So when we talk about the inert elements, right? So these inert elements will basically include the noble gases. What are those noble gases? Starting from helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and then radon. So these are all the helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, and then radon. So all these are what? The noble gases or the inert elements. Then we have normal or representative elements. We already talked about it. What is it? The s block and p block elements, except inert gases. We call them as what? Normal or representative element. Okay. Transition elements are the d block elements. There are some exceptions like zinc, cadmium, mercury. Nowadays we don't consider them as a transition element because one of the important properties of the transition elements is they will be able to show variable valencies. So we'll talk about it when we go to chemical bonding chapter. Okay, so variable valencies is a characteristic property of the d block elements, and that is not shown by zinc or cadmium or mercury. That's why we don't strictly call them as transition elements, but we still call them as the d block elements. Okay, then we have inner transition elements. We even talked about what is the reason why we call them as inner transition, because we'll see that there is a gradual shift in terms of properties across the cerium to lutetium or the thorium to lawrencium. Okay, but here the electrons are filled into what? The n-2 f subshell level. That's why we call them as what? The inner transition elements. So we have cerium to lutetium, the 4f series, and thorium to lawrencium, which is the 5f series. So this series we call them as the inner transition elements. Okay, and one of the other important things with regard to the modern periodic table is the nomenclature of the elements which are either yet to be discovered or discovered with some questions on their existence in isolation or existence in independence. So instead of giving a name for these elements, right, they have been named as per the standard nomenclature rules. So in fact in this year 2020 JEE mains, right, there was a question that is being asked on this. So how are we going to name these elements? It's a very simple nomenclature. So we have some root words. So what are these root words? 0, for that the name root word is what? Nil, abbreviation N. 1 means un, abbreviation U. 2 means bi, abbreviation B. 3 means tri, abbreviation T. 4 means quad, abbreviation Q. 5 means pent, abbreviation P. 6 means hex, abbreviation H. 7 means sept, abbreviation S. 8 means oct, abbreviation O. 9 means ENN, abbreviation is what? E. Now look at it. What is the rule? It's a very simple rule. The roots are put together in order of digits which make the atomic number, and IUM is added in the end. I'll tell you what this is. Okay, say for example, we have to give the IUPAC name. So just like the way we will call the nomenclature rules elsewhere, right? So these are also the standard nomenclature rules as per the IUPAC convention. Okay, so if you have to name this 108, the element with atomic number 108. Okay, look at this. What is 1 represents? Un. Okay, check it. Un. Then 0 represents what? Nil. Okay, 8 oct, and in the end what you have to keep? IUM. What is it? Un nil octium. And what will be the symbol for this? Look at this. 1 means what? Un is U. 0 is what? N. 8 is what? O. So UNO. Similarly, we can try for 115 also. Look at 115. So 115. So 1 is what? Un. So un. Again un. 5 is what? Pent. You have to keep EM. Un and pentium. Symbol will be what? UUP. That is it. So we have to look at the root words for the respective digit, and then name means we have to add IUM for the names. Symbol means just we have to pick up these abbreviations and then keep them as it is. Okay, so we must be even ready to answer questions like this. If they give us, like say UUP, they ask what is the atomic number of the element. Derive the atomic number of the element based upon the IUPAC nomenclature. Like that also they can give questions. We should be ready to answer it. So for that, what we must do? We should be able to remember this table. That is it. If we are able to remember the table means we can answer all those kind of questions. Okay, let us try one example. So what is it? What would be the IUPAC name and symbol of elements with atomic number 122, 135 and 150? So we have to write the IUPAC names and symbols of the elements. What are the atomic numbers? 122, 135 and 150. For that we should just think about the table first. Okay, so this is the table, right? So 122, we'll write the names first. 122 means what? Un. Okay, by EM. What is it? Un by BM. 135. 135 means what? And for this we can put the symbol also. 122 means what? UBB. That is the symbol. 135. 135 means what? Un. Tri. Pentium. What is the symbol for this? UTP. Then 150. 150. 150 means what? Un. Pent. Nilium. 150, right? Which is what? UPN. So this is how we can write the IUPAC names and the symbols of the elements. For that, as I said, we should remember the table. So nil means what? 0. Symbol is, abbreviation is N. Un, UN, abbreviation is U for 1. Bi, B is the symbol. 2. Tri, T is symbol. Quad, Q is symbol. 4. Pent, 5 is the count and P is symbol. Hex, H is symbol. 6 it counts. Sept, S is symbol. 7 it counts. Oct, O is the symbol. 8 it counts. ENNN, E is the symbol. 9 it counts. So this is how we look at the IUPAC nomenclature of the elements about which either the discovery is yet to happen. For this, we can throw up any number. Like say, we can even ask what is the IUPAC name of the element with atomic number 165. Like that also we can ask questions because it is after all hypothetical. Okay. So I'll just erase it so that we can just keep a note of it. So look at this. What we have. The 122 is what? The Un by BM. UBB. 135 is what? Untripentium, UTP. 150 is what? Unpentnilium, UPN. Okay. So while we talked about the arrangement of the elements in the periodic table, what we are focused on in this chapter is how are we going to look at the periodicity in terms of the properties of the elements, because that is the purpose for which the table itself is created. So if you look at why there is a periodicity in the properties of the elements. First of all, when we talk about the periodicity, right, what do you mean by the periodicity? There is a repetition. So why the repetition is coming? The repetition is coming, as per the modern periodic law, which is based upon the atomic number. So the modern periodic law is based upon what? It is based upon the atomic number. So why the periodicity is coming is because of the repetition of similar outer electronic configuration. At certain intervals, we are having a repetition of the outer electronic configuration. And chemical properties of elements, right, they are function of the outer electronic configuration. The chemical properties of elements, they are a function of outer electronic configuration. Okay, because the representative element, at least the outer electrons are the ones that are going to participate in the chemical bonding. Transition elements, the n minus 1 d electrons can also participate in the chemical bonding. Okay, but the representative elements mostly will have the outer shell electrons only participating. So the outer electronic configuration, or in general we can say electronic configuration, is the reason. So similarity is coming after regular intervals, and that is the reason for the cause of periodicity. So if you look at for instance, right, the elements of the first group. So first group, lithium, we have atomic number 3. What is the arrangement? 1s2 2s1. We can also write it as helium 2s1. Sodium, atomic number 11, 1s2 2s2 2p6 3s1. We can write it as what? Neon 3s1. We can see the outermost arrangement is what? 2s1 3s1, then noble gas followed by 2s1 for the lithium, noble gas followed by 3s1 for sodium, noble gas followed by 4s1 for potassium, rubidium, noble gas followed by 5s1, cesium, noble gas followed by 6s1, francium, noble gas followed by 7s1. So all of them, they have this ns1 arrangement, noble gas followed by the ns1. So the repetition of the outer electronic configuration similarity would mean that the chemical properties, most of the chemical properties will depend upon the outer electronic configuration. So the chemical properties of lithium will be almost similar to that of sodium, which will be almost similar to that of the potassium, which will be similar to rubidium and cesium and also francium. We may have some slight variations, but broad level properties will be arriving at a similar result because of the similarity in their outer electronic configuration. And the periodicity is coming because the outer electronic configuration is repeating at certain regular intervals. Okay, so this is the cause of periodicity of the properties. Now what are the properties that we are going to cover in this chapter? So mostly we look at the concept of size or the radius, because size of an atom, if you think of it like an sphere, then we'll talk about the radius. Okay, radius means we'll talk about the atomic radius as well as the ionic radius. Then we'll talk about how the ionization energy, which we can also call as ionization enthalpy. We'll see that some textbooks, they will also mention ionization potential. Okay, so what it basically means is, ionization potential means how much potential we must apply. We'll see when we go to the definition. Okay, ionization potential would mean how much potential we must apply so that the electron will be removed. This can also be talked in terms of energy, that is what we call as ionization energy. Okay, so we'll see what is the difference between the two, and we'll talk about electron affinity, which can also be termed as what? Electron gain enthalpy. Then we look at electronegativity. Then we look at the trend in terms of the metallic and non-metallic nature, and we'll also talk about the nature of oxides and hydroxides. So these are the main properties we are going to cover, and we'll also take a quick look at the volume, density, melting points and boiling points, nature of hydroxides, the strength of oxoacids, things like this. Because anyway, these other properties, right, we will cover them in detail when we go to the respective groups, because both in the +1 +2 we are going to study about the respective groups. So in +1 we have S block, and S block we'll study the first group and second group, and P block we'll study about the 13th and 14th in +1. In +2 we'll study about the rest of the P block, 15th to 18th. D and F block we'll study. So which means when we go to the respective groups, we'll talk about these other properties in detail. But here our main focus is going to be on the radius, ionization energy, electron affinity, electronegativity, nature of the element in terms of the metallic or non-metallic, and the nature of oxides and hydroxides of the elements. So we'll go and cover these properties in the subsequent video lectures.